Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lavoie. Thrilled to be joined by a special guest today, Noah Rahimzadeh, head of partnerships over at Digioh. He's a founder turned partnership strategist who's built a health tech startup right out of college, scaled partner programs across major MarTech players like ReturnPath, Airship, Movable Ink, and Malomo, and now leads partnerships at a bootstrap company powering zero-party data-driven personalization. Today, we're going to dig into those scrappy playbooks, the relationship-first mindset, working at a company without VC strings attached, and why he believes you can build a great partner program with almost no code. Welcome to the show, Noah.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's awesome to be here. I messed up the first time and missed it. So I appreciate you giving me a second chance. Also, I just feel like I'm, in the company of a legend. Early in my time at Malomo, I was new to ecom but I knew of you as this partnerships guru in the space. I saw you, I think, at ChargeX, and we
Santa Monica.
crossed paths, but I didn't get to say hi, but I knew I should. And so finally we crossed paths at the Bungalow, which is one of my favorite bars in America. And I worked up the courage to come say hi. And years later, here we are on your podcast, man. It's awesome.
Well, I'm thrilled to see you. I definitely remember the Santa Monica encounter at ChargeX. I don't remember quite as much about the Bungalow for obvious reasons.
Right.
That was a bit of a blurrier night, but nonetheless, certainly thrilled to have you on. And we're going to unpack everything that big brain's got to offer. But first, we always warm our guests up with 5 quick-hitting questions that's part tactical, part lighthearted, to get them to know you a little bit better, ease into the conversation. You ready for that?
Let's do it. Fire round right away. I love it.
All right, let's do it. So first thing, when you step into a new partner role, which both of us have, what's your first non-negotiable move? Like, you got to get this one thing done in the first 30 days.
Yeah, I'd say meet with every other department head, understand first and foremost what their experience to date has been like with partners. Some are going to, have great experiences. Some are going to have poorer ones, and how they think partnerships can do one or two things, soon on in my tenure to make their lives either easier or make them or their team's lives more valuable.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll unpack a little bit more about that later on today. And for any leader listening, you have to establish those relationships early. I've made the mistake of kind of assuming, okay, I'm going to show them my impact and therefore they respect me as a result of it. That doesn't work that way, right? They need to really get to know you. They need to personally benefit from your inputs to really build up those relationships. So I'm glad you started us there. So the next one's more of a fun one. What's more nerve-wracking, pitching a CRO like Allison Kelly or pitching your own startup in college?
Oh man. Funny about AK. I've actually known her for like 10 years or so. No, that's not true. Maybe 8. She was one of the first partners to come visit me in Indianapolis when I was managing her, the Cordial partnership, and I was at ReturnPath. I don't know if she came for me or for the Salesforce partnership, but we'll let the listeners decide. So I've known her for a while. She obviously has an insanely impressive career. I've got to go though with pitching my startup that last day of school, because literally if we didn't pass, which 2 kids in the class did not pass, you don't graduate. So luckily it went well for us.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure if Allison, once she hears this, she's gonna be like, "Oh, really?" And then she'll try to step up the intensity. We'll talk more about Allison. We'll talk more about your startup days in a minute. But the third question for you is, name one boring but effective partnership play that you consistently run.
Make sure a partner is included in every case study.
Yeah. Across the company. So you're not just talking about within the confines of your partner program on the partner marketing side, but you're going across the globe. Yeah.
Every case.
I think that,
and if I had it my way, which we do a pretty good job of this out at Digioh, include a partner in every piece of content, event, any sort of marketing campaign, at least one partner, but at the very least, a case study. There's always an opportunity to include a partner. That's going to expand reach. It's going to give the partner an olive branch for no reason at all. And it's it's a great win-win.
Yeah, and you get more insights on the customer because it's just another vendor that has more customer insights, et cetera. So I love that you're famous for on the co-marketing front, and that's one thing I love about Digioh, which we'll talk about later. Is just everything is ecosystem kind of driven. Blake, who runs marketing at Digioh, that's his DNA. Obviously, Allison's dripping it across the org. So we'll definitely unpack that a bit more. Second last question. Speaking of Digioh, if Digioh had a mascot, which it doesn't today, what would it
It does
be
not.
and why?
Yeah, our logo can't count as a mascot, I guess.
No, no.
I'm really tempted to say our CEO, Rishi. Everybody who knows Rishi loves him
Love him.
for good
Love him.
reason. He's an amazing guy. He's built an amazing business. Every time I get on a partner, whether they know him personally or just have heard of him, it always starts with a compliment about Rishi. And I'm really grateful to be on his team. But that's probably a cop-out answer. So I'm actually going to go with octopus. And the only reason is because it's very top of mind. Blake and I are VP of marketing, who I partner very close with internally. And one of the big reasons I came to Digioh, he was saying, like, I feel like we're like an octopus because we get our tentacles in so many different areas of our brand's business. And the nucleus of the octopus, the head, I don't know what that thing's called, but the body of the octopus can be a little bit different based on what the main use case that companies are trying to
It's
accomplish with
adaptive.
us. But we're always going to have our tentacles in multiple areas that brands are looking at every day very closely. So
Love that.
I actually really like that analogy you brought up earlier today.
Well, I can't wait to see the rebrand next year.
Yeah, there you go.
To the octopus. Love that. And then the last one, we'll get you on a lighter one. If not for partnerships and health tech startups, what would Noah be doing if you could do anything?
Oh man. Oh, if I could do anything, it would be I'd probably be a musician. I'm horrible. I can barely clap on beats, so maybe that's part of the lure for me. But the lifestyle just, it's awesome, and I love going to shows. That or an athlete, both cop out answers. But I played basketball growing up.
These are your answers,
always,
man. They're not cop outs. This is not anyone else's life. This is your life.
That's true. I always thought I would be in the NBA, but
Same.
Partnerships pro ended up being the path.
Yeah, well, same for me, but for me, you have the height. I tapped out at 5'9" in grade 9, so there we are. But we're doing all right. We're doing all right. All right, cool, man. Well, now we know you a lot better. Now we're warmed up. Now we're gonna get into the fun stuff, and we're gonna try to go in order, and we're gonna start with your early entrepreneurial spark and origin story, because you're actually one of the few people who have formal academic training that is even somewhat relevant to like partnerships, biz dev, startup life. So many of us come from like really random academic backgrounds, but you seemingly kind of got an early start. So let's go back to Ball State. Love the name of that, by the way. You're building safekeeping out of college. What was the first memory of realizing I want to build something on my own? And how did that entrepreneurial bug influence how you've approached partnerships ever since?
So I would pretty typical of entrepreneurs. I think their family were entrepreneurs. My dad was one. Didn't turn out to be very successful one in the end, but it still gave me the bug early on. I knew that if and when I made it to college, that would be the path that I chose. I wanted to major in entrepreneurship, and that's obviously what I did. I think the biggest way that it influenced my partnerships career is like learning the value of real relationships early on. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. So I'll keep it there.
I love that. I mean, sorry, Dad, catching a stray bullet there. On the
he knows,
that wasn't a very.
Yeah.
It's like he knows. What a bar. Love that. Okay, cool. So then that's how you kind of got your start. Now let's go to your kind of first corporate experience. You go to Return Path. What was that first exposure to structured partnerships like? I love how you kind of said in our prep, focusing too much on transaction over relationships, can be quite costly. So how did those early mistakes kind of flip your philosophy?
So I think at Return Path, my first role there after I left, safekeeping, which did have some partnerships, which was my company, sorry, did have some partnerships exposure just by nature. I didn't know they were partnerships at the time, but to go to market, we had to integrate with these much bigger platforms. And that was my first informal experience. And then I go to Return Path, and all of a sudden I'm managing like 60 ISV partners who paid Return Path to integrate. And it was insanely transactional. Like most of my conversations with partners that I managed at first were via email around their renewal, sending them a contract that had the renewal amount. And I only heard more about more from our partners if they had a problem. And I think that's probably the first exposure I got to like the value of relationships in the corporate world. But to be honest, I've always been a super relationship heavy guy. Like, for example, one of my early advisors at Safekeeping, I I'm going tomorrow with him to meet with some private equity guys who are looking to raise a tech fund, and they want advice from people who've been around the block. And he's bringing me there. We're going to do a half day of meetings, and then we're going to go to the live golf tournament together. And, this is a relationship I've had for 12 years. In those 12 years, we've done very little actual business together outside of Safekeeping or since Safekeeping. But it's really important to me to maintain those. Obviously, common ground is important, and we have a lot of that, but it doesn't always have to be, there doesn't always have to be like an insane value exchange to maintain the relationships.
Yeah, I'm glad you took it that direction, and thanks for sharing that experience, Noah, on just the value of relationship building. And you said that was kind of one of your first key lessons in your entrepreneurial journey. And now that I'm kind of deep into my own first entrepreneurial journey, the relationships are coming up huge. I didn't know that they would pay out this way, but just having those connections, and I like how you kept it realistic. It's like, hey, it's not that there's always this consistent value exchange between these like network connections. It's not that you talk to them all the time. It's that, hey, whenever you do have a collision, is it a positive one for both people? That is the
Yes,
simplest bar I think you should
totally.
aim for. Just a positive collision, however infrequent or frequent they are, so that when the day does come where you're in a leveraged position where you want something from someone and you can give something back, there's a great chance for success. So I really want to drill down, because that is one of your specialties. Like, realistically, to not intimidate our audience who are maybe earlier stage career, like, what does building your network really look like over a 5-year period, as an example?
I think I love how you just described it. I think there are a few key things. One silly one that I tell a lot of people early in their career is at the end of every call, first of all, don't get right into business on any call unless it's necessary. Ask about their personal life. You did that to start. I didn't ask you back. Wow, that sucks. Sorry, man. We'll get into
It's all
that
good.
later. We had a
Love it.
podcast to
You
record.
self-diagnosing in
Uh,
real time.
right. but but at the end of the call, bring something up from the first part of the call. End the call on a personal note. Don't end the call on, hey, this transaction's going to go this way. That goes a long way in like making people feel listened to and liked. And, data says that the most liked people are the people who like others back the most, or that they make others feel liked. That's just a social psychology thing and a tactical one to go with it. But I think over the long term, it's about maintaining maintaining the relationship even when there is nothing else to talk about. Like, I have so many friends that I've met in ecom just in the last 3 years that are friends not because we've accomplished some crazy thing with all of them. They're friends because we ask about each other's lives, we care about each other as people. The relationship with Bob, who I'm hanging out with tomorrow and doing some cool business stuff and some fun with, we've had countless beers and countless dinners where there was no ask from me, no ask from him. We do talk about business, but there wasn't the expectation that we were going to walk away with something. I think we
Right.
both actually have the mindset that one day the day will come where we're going to do something really cool together, but that's not why we're friends, right? That's not why he's an advisor to me. It's because we have shared interests, and, we've gotten to know each other, and we took time to do that
Yeah,
outside
it's a
of
really,
business.
really great playbook, and a lot of our people in our audience, early to mid stage, it's intimidating to kind of build your network. I think that's like a realistic path. And if I was to distill that down into like one short term element, one long term element, short term, like meaning when you actually meet with people, it's that like positive experience. Like, can you be authentic and give them a positive experience, and can they give you one? But then longer term, it's playing the long game, right? Like, it's really unlikely that everyone you're going to meet, there's something you can get from them in the moment, right? But maybe in the future. So play the long game, like you described with your friend Bob, as I have with some of my friends and advisors as well. So I think that's a really good capstone on that one. So let's
One
keep
thing
going
just
to.
really
Oh, you go
quick
ahead.
on
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
one way to like make it really easy for me that I've thought about is just make every call, like think about going into every call or every meeting or every interaction. Tell yourself you're going to make their day go better by the end of it. And if you just
Yeah,
distill it down to
yeah.
that, you will end that call on a positive note to them, and that will go a really long way.
I love that. I love that. It reminds me of a quote that I always think about, which is people will forget what you said and what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel.
Yes,
Right?
100%.
Think about
Yep.
any really great relationship you've ever had or any really negative relationship or moment you've ever had. You don't remember the specifics, but you remember the feeling of fear or love or whatever, right? So I love how you frame that note. That's the bare minimum goal in every interaction. Okay, cool. This was the relationship masterclass no one asked for that we ended up getting into. I love it. Cool. Let's keep going now from startup chaos to channel roles, but now you're starting to get into like more strategic, more senior level roles, building programs in lean environments. So I want to get into Digioh, and then we're going to go actually back to Malomo after. But first, let's start with Digioh, right? Building partnerships at a bootstrap company. So that the actual first question I want to go to is, Digioh not VC backed, right? Publicly and famously for that. Agile, long-term thinking. So I'm curious, what drew you there? And then what do you see as the biggest challenges and advantages of operating without outside capital?
So 1 and 1A team, Blake and I, our VP of marketing, I've just always admired from afar. But then we actually worked together when I was at Malomo. We launched the Malomo Attentive Partnership. In the meantime, we became buddies. Then he went to our competitor Wonderment, and we maintained our relationship despite that. Again, going back to relationships. And when there was an opportunity to join him, which we had talked about countless times for years, just because of our very similar ideology when it comes to go to market, I was at a time where I was ready to make a change, and there was an opening for a partnerships leader, and it worked out that way. Also, Allison, I've known for years. Our CRO, Ali Cassis, I've known for years. She's fantastic, our head of CS. And then I met Rishi and fell in love with him as well. So, team is huge and obviously a big component of anything, any career decision. The second thing from a business standpoint is just the digital marketing landscape has changed so much in the last few years with, compliance and new laws and regulations and privacy issues. And second and third party data is either already mostly gone, if not very soon, mostly gone, meaning zero party data is going to become the future of digital marketing. And it's no longer going to be a nice to have, it's going to be a need to have. And I'm betting that Digioh will be leading the pack in zero party data in the years to come. I think, for the most part, we are today, and we're going to continue that trend.
I love that. And I love how you started with like the team. I think as you start to get into more senior roles where it's highly compensated but high stakes, I think the quality of the product's important, the market, TAM, kind of growth, those are all kind of really important things. But the team is critical because, especially in a partnerships role, you can't execute effectively without strong collaboration. So I'm glad you went there. The follow-on question, though, for you, Noah, is, Digioh being bootstrap, where so many other of its peers, and even in the e-com ecosystem, are, heavily kind of leveraged from a venture capital perspective. Like, what has your experience been like working in a bootstrap environment where there isn't outside investment? What are maybe the advantages of that, right? And then perhaps is there any challenges of that where maybe you can't be quite as aggressive on the growth side?
So the advantages are we don't answer to anybody. We
Love
are
it.
able to put the customer in the center of everything we do. Allison and I actually just talked about that this morning from a positioning standpoint, and this matters to brands, right? Uh,
100%.
VC-backed companies are forced to do things that are not always in the customer's best interest, very often. We are able to do that because we don't answer to anybody else but our customers. We're beholden to our customers. We're not beholden to VC firms. I don't think there's anything wrong with raising VC money in any way. Like, I've been at a lot of companies that are VC backed. My company is VC backed out of school, but it does have those challenges that can come with it. Another challenge, frankly, is when I was at Malomo, we'd have a board meeting every quarter, and that took almost 2 weeks because you have to prep for it for a week, and then you have a week of meetings and reviews,
It's
and
like
then
public
debrief.
company-esque in a way. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Uh, the challenges with it are strictly just funding, right? Like, we have to operate a lot more lean because we have to remain very cash flow positive, but also maintain a growth rate that's going to propel us into the future. So I would say from, a challenges standpoint, I'm trying to think if there's any other major drawbacks. I guess one could be you don't have that sort of like outside advisory piece, but I
Fair.
would say that the pros outweigh the cons on that one. And
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah,
the
definitely.
outside advisory is always not a great thing, frankly.
Yeah, exactly. You can have unwanted advice coming in. So
Right.
I appreciate you sharing that because we definitely have listeners who exist within bootstrapped environments, and it can be challenging. So that was really helpful for them to kind of understand how to lean into the positives at all. But a little bit ago, you mentioned Allison, and that was my next question. Allison Kelly, aka for those who may not be familiar with her, really one of the most respected, no BS CROs in all of tech. Really impressive background. I'm a huge fan of Allison. So I'm curious because we have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are reporting to CROs, right? Like partnership people are increasingly reporting to CROs or working in some capacity directly with the CRO. So I'm curious, what's that dynamic like? Like, what are you learning from her? And what advice do you have for other partnership leaders who either report directly or indirectly to the CRO?
Ooh, there's probably a lot here. um, I think data is everything first and foremost. Obviously, to a CRO, really anybody, leader in go to market or business leader. If you can't show what you're doing through data, you're gonna have a really really hard time. Even if you have a really strong relationship, which I'm happy to say Allison and I do. That being said, the flip side of it is. Uh, you have to be, and I think this is really key for partnerships professionals. You have to be able to easily convey what you're doing to advance the business through partnerships, even when data isn't there to support it yet. Because a lot of times, especially when you're building a program from scratch, which I've done a couple times now, it's going to take a few months. Like I would say, Malomo took almost 6 months to start seeing real results. But every day or every couple days, I'm in the Slack channels letting everybody know. Set up a Slack channel, by the way, whatever you want to call it, partnerships go to market, and put in there all the time what you're up to advance the business through partners. Uh, I've done that now at Digioh and Malomo. Super important for transparency because leadership is only looking at data most of the time. And for us,
Right.
it takes a while to see the results come to fruition. So
The lag.
transparency is everything.
Yeah.
Um, then just like regular communication overall. And the last piece, which I actually talked to AK about today, just overall in our business with where we're at, but I think super important for all partnerships professionals, regardless of the size of the business, is we have to be strategic and tactical. There's probably not a partnerships leader that doesn't have to get in the weeds in some capacity, regardless of the size of their org. And I think that, CROs are able to see when you're just trying to be high level and not really, get your hands dirty.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great blueprint for anyone who has to report directly to any type of revenue leader, certainly the CRO. And I think one of the most important things you started with was on the data and storytelling side. You need to be speaking the language that the CRO speaks, whether it's in board meetings if they have them. But a key challenge I see with partnership leaders, director, VP level, is they're coming up with their own like partnership created metrics, right? That aren't the same metrics that sales leadership uses and revenue leadership uses. So I think that's one final thing I'll leave the audience with is like, hey, look, you need to be speaking the same language. Pipeline added, time to close, sales cycle
Yep.
length, win rate. Don't be using your own vernacular, right? Because they're going to look at you like, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about. And it'll take so long for them to even understand what you are talking about before you can even get into the weeds. So I think data storytelling with the right data, I think is has to be part of your plan.
I think it can come off as like frothy. So partnerships is
Great word.
always going to be looked at by some people in the org as like, where's the real value here? Or
Yeah.
uh
Tugs and chugs at
right,
events.
exactly. So to your point, Chris, I think that's a great one. With Allison and I actually like I've just adapted to the way she defines source first influence. Like I didn't come in with my playbook and be like, no, this is how we're doing it now, because that would always be an uphill battle. And at the end of the day, as long as shit's actually getting done, the way that we define certain terms doesn't matter. What matters is the results that are being shown, and that not only she, but the rest of the org can understand those results clearly.
Yeah, I love you checking your ego at the door. And anyone in a similar head of partnerships type position, I encourage you to like follow Noah's example there, where he kind of checked his ego at the door. He's like, hey, look, Allison is who she is for a reason. She's the CRO. Sure, I have input, and she respects that, right? But would I rather waste a bunch of time trying to get her to fall in line with what I think is important from a definition perspective, or should I just respect her position and credibility and say, you know what, I'm going to follow that, and I'm going to just deliver the results, right? So I appreciate the humility there, Noah. I think that's key. Next up, want to go back actually, right? Because, building, you're no stranger to building from scratch. So I do want to unpack your Malomo experience, which was a really successful stint. But before we dive in, I do, if you don't mind, want to acknowledge, something. Obviously, recently, Anthony Smith, co-founder of Malomo, sadly passed away in June of this year. So I know that you knew Anthony, and he had poured his heart and alongside Ya to build that company up. So I just want to say, our condolences to that. Obviously, everyone I've talked to has just talked about him as being this like brilliant mind and clearly loved. So hope that's all right, Noah. I just wanted to acknowledge that before we jumped into your Malomo stint.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Obviously, super, super hard. Really, obviously, really hard on Yao. So he'll appreciate me shouting that out.
Yep.
I'm sure he'll
Of
be
course.
listening. So thanks, man.
Of course, we'll definitely send it over to him. So, Malomo's partner journey, building an agency and tech partnership program from the ground up, really difficult to do. So just we get the question all the time, and I certainly do, and I'm sure you do as well. It's like, hey, I'm in my first time kind of like head of partnerships type role, first partnership hire. How the heck do I even approach my first 90 days? Right? So walk us back. Like, how do you even approach those first 90 days, which are obviously critical? You got to establish credibility. You got to hit the ground running. You got to get some foundations set. So walk us through your own playbook for the critical first 90 days.
Man, that is a tough question. Like, to be honest, I didn't really have a playbook coming in. And the reason is like, I had never done this before. I had spent the last, I started my own thing, which was very different than years in enterprise MarTech. And here I am coming back to the e-com world. I actually knew Yao and Anthony from my startup. They helped us out in the early days when they had a development agency. So I knew them, and I had done some like totally impromptu free advising for them on the partnership side. But all of my experience to that point had been more enterprise. So I think they just trusted me to sort of, figure out how we can make this work. I think, for me, the first thing is internal buy-in. I wanted to make sure, and this goes back up to the top of the call, that everybody on leadership, but also we were a small enough company that everybody at the company understands, not that partnerships are going to like be this total game changer in the near term, but this is the vision for what they can be. And that came with a lot of examples of best in class programs like Salesforce and HubSpot and, Gorgeous at the time too, of what this can lead to over time if we do it right. And I did have some guiding principles that I shared with the team, which I still, remind people of it all the time, even at Digioh, which is give first and build real relationships. And talking through how we can do that with the entire team, because it was going to take a village to build partnerships with major organizations like a Gorgeous or like a Klaviyo, when we're, a 10-person tracking app, was sort of the foundation for how that came about. And in those first 90 days, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier about how I sort of operate, which is co-marketing goes first. So understanding where does Malomo fit in the ecosystem and plug in that makes our customers now, our customers at the time, their customers now, more valuable, right? So let's take Klaviyo for an example. We understand that we have an integration with Klaviyo, but that doesn't mean anything if we can't tangibly say, this is the success that you can see by working with Klaviyo and Malomo. This is the success you can see by working with Gorgeous and Malomo. This is the success you could see by Recharge and Malomo. And then you sort of build this ecosystem of, okay, here's how we fit in the broader stack. And you can go to market around that, not only through your own messaging, but also through those partners. So that was really the first 90 days, is understanding where we fit in the ecosystem and then seeing what partners we want to align with.
Yeah, this is awesome. No, I'm learning so much about you, and one of the skills that you clearly have that's quite strong is patience and expectation setting and communicating upwards, like reporting to CRO in your current stint. Reporting and working directly with the co-founders at Malomo as an example. That's high stakes, and it takes a lot of courage to be like, you know what, like we're gonna figure this thing out, but like let's take a step back, zoom out, and think about what we want this to be in the future. And I'm gonna
Yep.
create momentum, but like I need you to be patient with me as we kind of build this thing out. That's like really, really challenging to do. And I think it's easy to panic in those environments. And I'm guilty of that as well, where it's like, I just need revenue at all costs. And it leads to really poor decisions, which brings me to my second question on this one, Noah, which was in our prep, you mentioned, hey, tech partners come first before agencies, which I think is contrarian, right? So tell us more about that and why that order.
Yeah. Just really quick on the last point. I think a lot of people panic. They think they need to show revenue. And so they go ask for leads. And what you're doing there is you might get a couple leads in the short term, but you are killing yourself for longevity and from a
At
long-term
what
success
cost?
standpoint. And I talked about early with Yao and Anthony, mostly Yao, because Anthony was more on the tech side. Like I'm coming here to build a program for longevity. Literally use those words. So we're going to build real relationships. We're not going to go try to do transactional stuff. And that's going to be how we try to build this. And like, I don't know if it's going to work, frankly, but that's a strategy that I want to implement. Luckily it worked out. So I think the reason that I start with tech partners is because I can't even figure out what agencies I want to target until I understand, again, the ecosystem that we fit in. Once I understand the ecosystem that we fit in, I can say, oh, we're a great Klaviyo partner. Well, then Klaviyo has hundreds, if not thousands, of agencies that are a great partner that we can go tell the same joint story that we're telling to customers to their agency network as well. If I go try to partner with a Salesforce shop when I'm at Malomo, it makes no sense. Nobody would do that. Of course, it's an extreme example, but you get where I'm going. It's going to be a really hard uphill battle to convince that agency to work with you when you can't clearly state how the tech that you're bringing to the table and the program that you're bringing to the table makes the rest of their stack that they're offering service off the back of more valuable to their customers. I think you have to. I don't even know how people don't start that way, but I agree. It does seem
Will
it
will
does
you be
seem
shocked?
contrarian.
I mean, look, I absolutely love, like, I'm slurping every ounce of this because I mean, I'm a, cut my teeth in tech partnerships, obviously, but I'd be honest, like, rare do I see kind of the first partner leader hire prioritize tech first, even if they come from a tech partnership background. Because I think there's just this perception that like channel and service and agency is the faster time to value and can scale
Yes.
better. But what I love about your approach is you know, tech takes a lot longer to stand up. So you got to get that ball rolling early, right? Because it takes so effing long to kind of stand it up in the first place. But I love, and I'm going to tell our producers, like, this is one of the headlines for this episode was like, you don't even know what ecosystem you're in until you actually start to develop it around your kind of integration strategy. And that can really make it so much easier to understand the direction to go to on the service and agency side, right? So that's like it kind of illuminates the path forward. And there's a ton of tangible product, commercial, marketing value as well on top of tech partnerships in a nutshell. So just want to say thank you because I haven't really heard anyone put it that way of like why you should start with tech before agency, but I think you really gave us a strong blueprint.
One added point there is unless you're a partnerships leader and with the co-founders of an unbuilt technology, very few SaaS platforms that don't have integrations virtually built in from day one. So to your earlier point, like, yes, revenue is easier to go get from agencies early. But if I'm starting at Malomo, we don't really have any agency partners or very many that we can go build more off the back of quite yet. But we do have 15 or 16 integrations that we can go figure out what story are we going to go tell the market through the ecosystem that's getting value out of Malomo on top.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many tangible benefits from investing early, especially on those first few integrations. So I'm glad you unpacked them for it. Now let's skip ahead. Future of partnerships. We're also going to talk about data personalization and kind of conversion rate optimization alignment. So, let's start there, right? Zero party data, omni-channel personalization, all within Digio's wheelhouse, right? So you kind of flirted at this earlier on, but how is this becoming a secret weapon for both partners and agencies, especially in what I'll call a post-cookie world?
Yeah. So first of all, we don't do any sort of like third party data syndication. So everything we do is owned identification and zero and first party data collection. We're never gonna, for example, fill a Klaviyo list with a bunch of emails that didn't opt in. Everything is explicit. The way we do it. And that's very intentional, right? Like it goes back to what I said earlier about the landscape changing due to new laws and privacy issues and all of that stuff. So the true value of it is building not only list building, but building lists that are much more monetizable. I just spoke at a Klaviyo event a couple months ago, and they talked a lot about revenue per recipient, which is a term that's going to become more and more important. And list growth is great, but it doesn't matter if you can't monetize it. So what we're doing is not only collecting explicitly opted in emails through really targeted on-site experiences, but then we're also collecting data on top of it. So for example, instead of just getting a pop-up to say 10% off your first order if you drop your email, which AK likens to the Walmart greeter running up to you and saying, give me your email address and I'll give you 10% off, which I think is hilarious. We're going to learn a little bit about you. What are you shopping for today? What size are you? What colors do you like? Also, if you drop us your email, you'll get 10% off. But not only that, based on the data we collected, we're going to show you products that are best suited for you based on your unique needs. And then we're going to send that data back to your email platform in real time so we can use that to personalize the entire customer journey. So it's both acquisition and retention. And there's no way to really do that without talking to your customers as if you're shopping, in a store.
Yeah, I love that. I love the Walmart analogy, by the way. I think that was a clever way to put it. The next question, just to wrap up on this segment, is how does personalization fold then into a GTM-oriented partnership strategy, right? Like how can agency partners lean into that to drive client ROI, as an example, just to get tactical?
Yeah, I mean, I think that agencies are feeling the same pains that brands are in terms of, second and third party data going away and needing to better understand customers. In an age where I think it's like 76% of customers want personalized experiences, and you can't do that the same way that you could, even a couple years ago. You need to have some sort of, technology to fill the gap or strategy to fill the gap. So they're looking
Yep.
at, tools like Digioh to fill that gap with zero and first party data.
Yeah, no, I've always been fascinated. I've always loved zero party data. If I ever started any type of data oriented company, I don't want to do anything in the third party world. I just think there's nothing more powerful than just asking the customer or potential customer directly, like, hey, like, who are you? Tell us about yourself, and like, what are you looking for? Right? Like it's a surprisingly simple concept that Digioh. I'm impressed that Digioh has just remained so anchored to that kind of stance in the market and just really being disciplined to not like deviate away from that, right, as it's scaled. So I do love that. But we're gonna close out our last segment with 3 quick hitters to wrap up as well. So I'll
Let's
let you
do
take
it.
the listeners out in style, right? So just short, quick hitting answers, whatever comes to mind. First
Okay.
one, what's one non-partnership skill that's surprisingly made you a stronger partner leader?
Well, I want to say relationships, but I probably can't say
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Give us another one. We know
uh,
that's your superpower, but what else?
Come back to me on that one.
All
Let's do
right.
that
Well,
on
we'll do that. We'll do that one last. No problem.
yeah.
Next one, more functional. What's one e-commerce partnership trend in 2025 heading into next year that you think is here to stay, that you're excited about?
Partnerships trend. I think consolidation is going to become more and more
Definitely.
a thing that for better or worse, by the way, that we're
Yep.
all going to have to adjust around. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. All right, let's go back to that first one because I'm sure you can come up with one now. So, what's just one non-partnership oriented skill that is something that's strong within you that really helps you execute at a high level? Right. As an example for myself, just to kind of set the stage, for me, when I need to prioritize and get shit done, I can block it all out and I can just power through something for a couple hours at a time. Like the world doesn't exist to me. I will get it done. Like that is something I can do. So what's something similar like that for you?
Okay, I like that. I'm a big compartmentalizer too, but I'm gonna actually go more macro. I am like obsessed with all levels of business, so I listen to a ton of podcasts about
Love
the
that.
macro environment, stock market. Heavily invested there as well, but also startups. Like I still listen to SaaStr and all these startup podcasts, and I think that it helps me understand different levels
Love
of
that.
business and apply my learnings.
The curiosity, I think that's a great one, right? Continuously upskilling. You've already shown how humble you are in terms of like, knowing what you don't know. So I think that's a great one. Cool. And then the last one is if listeners remember just one thing from today's conversation, what should it be?
Build real relationships.
I love it. Simply put. Well, you've shown us the path now, right? And I think that's a huge takeaway from anyone listening from today's episode of like, hey, it takes time, but the payoff is massive, right? Learning how to play the violin, you can't learn how to do that overnight, right? But once you do, it's going to sound sweet. But cool. Look, Noah, this has honestly been an extremely fun conversation for me. I always love, especially interviewing friends. So our true listeners, find Noah on LinkedIn and certainly check out Digioh. And hey, if partnerships are your jam, definitely join us in the partnership community. Thanks so much for joining us, Noah.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you, man.